Hey guys, this is Callum from English Shooting and welcome back to the channel. We're going to be continuing with the series on getting your FAC or SGC, and now it's all about the interview process. You've submitted your application form. Well, what comes next is an interview with your FEO. Now, this interview is actually the cause of, I think, a lot of people's worry when they apply for a firearm or shotgun certificate. There's not a lot of information out there about what the general process of the interview is, what sort of things they're going to ask you, and I certainly don't have anything to show you today because they're not commonly recorded, but I'm hoping in future to sit down with an FEO to give more of an insight from the horse's mouth, but potentially even record my own future interview and show you various snippets. But for today, I'm just going to talk about what experiences I've had to hopefully give you a general idea and some tips and tricks of the do's and don'ts of your interview. So first off, what is an FEO? Well, an FEO is a firearm inquiry officer. They're not actually responsible for granting your certificates, but they write recommendations and reports towards the Chief of Police. It is the Chief of Police of your local police force that ultimately has the say of what you get and what you don't get, but they will be obviously acting quite strongly on the recommendations of the FEO. So the FEO is incredibly important to this process. So once you've submitted your application, you're going to get a call from your FEO or potentially an email asking for a convenient date to arrange an interview. This usually takes place at your home or could be a place of work, say if you work in a gun shop, so on and so forth, but usually at your home and where the guns are going to be stored. And as soon as you open the door to the FEO and invite them in, that's when the interview starts. They are immediately going to be looking around the house, sweeping it and seeing if there's anything that would indicate that you are of not fit character or are not fit to possess firearms. And you might be thinking, well, what sort of thing am I going to have lying about the house that they're not going to like? Well, if they come in and there's beer cans strewn across the place, they're instantly going to go, well, there's high alcohol consumption here, that might be an issue. On a more extreme note, you might have some, say, Nazi memorabilia hung up on the wall. Again, that's going to raise a few flags. So really, your home shows what sort of person you are, so the sort of things hung up on your wall or the general state of the house is going to give a good indication of what type of person you are. So you obviously want to make sure that there's nothing that is going to indicate that you're not fit, but invite them in, take them through and sit down. It's always highly recommended to offer a tea or a coffee and to make sure you have some nice biscuits for them. It's not necessarily going to be the make it or break it of your interview, but it's not going to hurt and maybe get them a little bit more relaxed and, you know, keep things a little bit more friendly. During the interview, they're going to be asking a lot of questions about you, and it is going to get a little bit personal at times. They're going to be asking what you do for a job, how long you've done that, what other hobbies and interests you have, and then if you have in the past had any mental health issues, if you're on any medication or have any other physical health issues, and if there's anybody within the household living with you that won't obviously have access to the guns but is likely to know where the safe and guns are being stored, they're going to ask about them as well. They're going to be asking what they do for a living and if they've had any mental health issues, but also any criminal records. They're going to be asking about anything on your criminal record, things from speeding fines right up to things that are potentially more serious, and also people living in the house as well. So they want a good overview of the type of people that are going to be around the safe within the property. They are also going to ask questions that are ultimately designed to trip you up, and one of my own experiences was when they had first come in, they saw chickens up the top of the garden and he asked, do you want a shotgun to be able to shoot foxes in your garden? Now, we live in a sort of highly urban area and we're surrounded by neighbours both sides and back. It would not be suitable to be letting off a shotgun in our garden. So obviously my answer was no, I want to be able to go clay pigeon shooting, but they want to, just check. They have to ask that question because that might be an underlying reason of why you want that gun. So they want to make sure that obviously it's going to be safe and used safely. Then they're also going to want to have a look around the house in terms of your security. Their job is ultimately to make sure that nobody gets their hands on this gun that shouldn't. Now that could be the actual applicant for the FAC. If you're not a fit person and they ascertain that, then they don't want to be giving guns over to you, but also they don't want anybody outside of the household or other non-FAC holders or SGC holders within the household to gain access to the firearm. So they are going to check your safe. I will do a separate video on what sort of safes you should go for and how to install them, but they're going to be looking at where they're positioned in the property. They're going to make sure that they are securely fitted, and you will see your FEO swing off of your safe. They will give it a good old pull and a good old tug to make sure that it's secure, and that if someone does gain access to the property, they're not going to be able to just walk off with your safe. Now, depending on what guns you're going for, how many guns you're going for, the level of security will need to be increased. So if you're going for, you know, a few guns, maybe half a dozen, they will most likely be happy with just the safe. But certainly as soon as you start to get into double digits, they're going to want increased levels of security. This will be things like monitored alarms, it will be sensors in the room that the guns are going to be stored, and potentially even CCTV. So these are all things they're going to want to see in place and ask what the security measurements are. Now, the part of the interview that is really for you as well is the potential negotiation with the firearms that you've applied for. And this is why I say don't worry about what guns you put down on your application to begin with, because it's not really until the interview process that you have the nitty-gritty sort of, this is what I want. They may want you to reduce it or change a few calibers, so on and so forth. So it's not set in stone on the application, but it's the interview that is going to then sort of sign off exactly what you are going for. So if you've applied for 25 guns on your first time application, they're probably going to go, yeah, we want to sort of tone that down a little bit and start you off with, you know, maybe half a dozen to 10 guns for your first time. And this is where you might want to be a little more firm with them. If you have all the correct justifications for every single gun you want, you've been shooting for say 6 months at a club and you've gained experience with all of them and you're competent with all of them, then you want to say, well, hang on a minute, no, I will do all of this shooting, I have already done all of this shooting, I'm a full member of a club, I'm competent with all of these guns, really I have all the justification in the world. There is going to be a little bit back and forth. Sometimes it will work against you where they're want to reduce the amount of guns. It can also work in your favor though. When I applied for moderators, I'd only applied for a couple of the rifles that I was getting, and the FEO said, well, why don't you want moderators for all of the guns? I said, well, to be honest, I don't think I'm really going to use them for, with moderators for the application that I'm going to have them. And he said, well, it's a health and safety thing. At the end of the day, if you can use the moderators on those guns and it's going to reduce the noise and potential hearing damage, then we want you to obviously be safe and be minimizing that risk. So actually upped the moderators for all of the guns that I was applying for. So that was a little bonus. You can also get into sort of negotiations with the size of your safe as well. If you're applying for a lot of guns, unfortunately the safe manufacturers always like to be conservative with the amount of guns you can store there, and the FEOs will usually go by the manufacturer's rating rather than what you can actually squeeze in there and what you can actually put. So these are the sort of things that it's more of a negotiation, and there are going to be compromises from both sides, but again, you just need to stay calm. If you've got all the justification, if you've got all the reason, then just explain it calmly and clearly to them, and if it's ticking all the boxes, they're not going to be able to object too much. But ultimately, you want to build a relationship with your FEO. You're going to know them for a fairly long time. You're going to be in contact with them for various questions in future, and also potential variations and renewals of your certificates. So get to know them, make sure you have their personal number as well, or their direct line, so that you can get in contact or email and be able to fire off questions as and when. But be polite with them, be calm with them. At the end of the day, you may see them as the enemy. These are the guys that could potentially lose you your application, but you want to get on their good side and you want to build a relationship with them. They're not scary, they're just purely doing their job. They're just getting to know you a little bit better, and just to see if there's anything that concerns them. And if you're both polite, if you're both friendly with each other, then you shouldn't have an issue, and it should go pretty straightforward. So if you have any other questions about this process, please put them in the comment section below. But I really hope that this has given an idea of what's involved and what you can expect. If you have found this video useful, please give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing for any future videos. And as always, guys, hope to see you soon.